welcome. It's Mysterious Forces Live. It's Christmas time. Don't vex me, YouTube. I paid for the licensing for that, YouTube. You can't get me for that. This is a trivia question. Do you know what that is the sound of? That's the sound of royalty-free music when you're small time. Oh my God. One day my budget will improve and my royalty-free music, but that's better than no Christmas music, I think. And I like Christmas time. So it is Saturday, December 15th, 10 big days until Christmas. I'm excited. I hope you're excited. I hope your holiday season is going well. It doesn't have to be Christmas. It can be Hanukkah. It can be whatever you observe at this time of year or nothing at all. We still love you. And speaking of loving you, I want to thank all of my subscribers and everyone who's been liking the show and sharing the show. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. And I'm parked at 290 subscribers, and I would like to push it up to 300 subscribers by the end of the year. So if you're new to this show or new to the channel, please hit like and subscribe. If you're already doing that, please share the video or connive some way, I don't know, bribe a relative with peanut brittle to subscribe to my channel. That would be okay with me. I could accept that. Let's see. Tonight, in a couple of minutes, I'm going to be talking to the Reverend Richard Moonchild. And he has so many interests going, and he has so much going on. I'm not even going to attempt to scratch the surface in this brief introduction. And we'll just get into the meat of the subject when we get him on here. But him and I are Facebook friends, and we've been talking back and forth, and he has a show of his own, Into the Shadows, and it's on YouTube. And I believe the channel is just Richard Moonchild. So look that up, and you'll also find a link. I just want to give a brief hello, and I want to let you know what I'm going to be doing. I'm going to be going to the Jimmy Church Fade to Black holiday party at the Rainbow on December 26th in Los Angeles. And I will do my best to live stream from that event. But if it is not possible to live stream from the event, I will certainly be capturing video and photos. And you will be able to catch up with me after I get back and get that out on the air. Also, the Scott Finster puppet is done. The alien puppet is done. I kind of hinted around at it. It is completely finished. And we'll be rolling that out soon. And also look for a brief video that I created today holding a Burmese python. We have a baby Burmese python, and my partner Sherry wants one of the viewers to select a name for the python. So if you want to, the snake is a female. So if you want to submit a name, go ahead and do that in the comments or contact me on social media. I am going to go to COSM, the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors, the facility that is owned and operated by Alex Gray, the renowned artist. And I'm going to be taking Alan Steinfield's workshop on remote viewing. And I'm going to come back from that with some footage and some interviews, and we will have a fantastic time. And of course, I am still planning the trip to Area 51. I'm not going to hammer on that too much right now because I want to get to my guest. I'm going to take a quick peek into the chat room. I see Explaining Esoterica. Hello, Kelly Farmer. There's Fascination Street, Jimmy. I was on Fascination Street with Jimmy and Mika earlier today, and it was late at night for them there in the UK. And I had a great time. It's a fabulous interview. Go to Fascination Street with Jimmy and Mika on YouTube, or find them on Facebook and watch that video and like that and share that as well as their other shows. They have a great show. I had a fantastic time. Jimmy, Mika, thank you so much. Thank you. And let's see. I see the professor is in the house. Out of mind. That's a new one to me. Anyway, without further ado, I would like to introduce my guest. And I'm going to let him tell you who he is. I don't think it would be fitting for me to try to describe him. I think he does it best for himself. Please welcome to the show for the first time, the Reverend Richard Moonchild. Richard, thank you so much for being here.
Oh, I've been waiting on this for a while. I'm going to enjoy this.
That's cool.
Um, I've been watching your show. I hadn't been able to watch it always live, but I've been staying pretty up to date with it. So I think you're coming a long way, and I enjoy your show.
All right. Thank you so much. You have your own show that you have started, and it's on YouTube, and it's called Into the Shadows. Can you tell the viewers who might not be familiar with what your work is, what your show is about?
Well, it's pretty much anything fringe. If it's going to be in the darkness, something that most people don't hear about in mainstream, that's probably what I'm going to be talking about. I'm going to cover subjects everywhere from ufology to demonology, uh, ancient texts like the Goetia or the Lesser Keys of Solomon, for those who don't know it by that word, uh, Necronomicon, and a bunch of others.
Wow.
Uh,
That, no, go
Go
ahead.
ahead.
Oh, okay. No, I was just saying those are fascinating topics. I like that. And you have a particular interest in ufology, correct? What is your interest in the field of ufology, and what's your take on that? And where are you at in that realm?
Well, let's just say I don't need disclosure. I've been studying the subject now for probably 30 years of my life since I was about 12 years old. My parents actually told me a story that got me started. And once I got into it, I was hooked. There was no way I was coming out of that subject. In fact, I actually went into aviation just because of that fact, um, because I wanted to be a credible observer. I wanted to know what I was looking at in the skies when it flew over. Um, I I know from past conversations with FAA, military and civilian aircraft pilots and mechanics alike, that there is something flying through our skies with impunity. The question is who and what. That's why I'm in it.
Right. So you are an aviator. You have a pilot's license. And if so, what is your background in aviation?
Well, I don't have the pilot's license. I was actually going after that next. I
Oh,
went into the National Aviation Academy in Clearwater, Florida, and
hmm.
did their 14-month course. By the end of that course, I got hit by a car, and that put an end to all of that.
Oh, I
Um,
see.
but I did graduate, and in top 5%, 3 to 5% of my class um, was studying the background of avionics and radar, ground radar. In fact, I've still got my entire library sitting in there on the shelf. So if I can't answer it off the top of my head, I probably have the answer.
That's awesome. So have you done any speaking, done any lectures? Do you have books, or where are you at within the community at large? Or is your new show kind of your entree into the alternative research community?
I've been in the shadows listening. I started out listening to Coast years ago and building my way through. I never really called in, kept quiet, figured it was better that way because a lot of people were it was really bad at that time for somebody to come out and talk about the things that I've had happen to me and the experiences my parents had. It seems to be opening a little bit more up, so I decided it was time to put up or shut up and start running my mouth.
Hmm. Can you extrapolate a little bit and tell us what some of your experiences are and what's happened to you and your family?
Well, before I was born, my mother was told that she would never have another child. She had her oldest boy, and it caused so many problems that she was told flat out she'd never have another child. She was terrified of the subject. My dad was into the subject really big. He was really into the UFO topic at that time. He was working at the Biltmore House when it was a dairy back in the day. And during that time, my mother started having experiences. She was contacted and she wrote it all down in a journal. They at one point told her that they were actually going to help her for something that she had done. And about 9 months later, there I was. All her problems that she had had from the first two pregnancies had completely vanished. All the scar tissue completely gone, completely healed of the problem. And she actually had me and then my younger brother later on, 3 years later. Um, as I grew, I found that I had very unique abilities in several different subjects, being computers, science, mathematics, and music, especially. At the age
Hmm.
of 5, I was telling everyone flat out that music was a language. It was the universal language,
Oh.
not math or science, but frequency.
Hmm. Okay.
And I've had my UFO sightings of my own. In fact, there
Hmm.
for a few years, I was seeing them daily. Um, it would be just about every time I looked up in the sky, I would see something that wasn't supposed to be there.
Do you think that you are seeing physical objects, or do you think you are having some kind of extra sensory perception of them?
Well, I don't know exactly. I don't know how to explain it. Sometimes I'll guarantee you they're really there. They're there. I'm seeing them because my wife sees them. People with me see them. Then on other times I'll see them, and by the time I get somebody to look, it's gone.
Hmm.
So I can't really answer that question either way. It may be both.
So, in what ways? Let's get into some detail here. In what ways have these enhanced abilities manifested in your life? What has this given you?
Well, at the age of 12, I started into Tesla research. I had a
Hmm.
science teacher actually realized my interest in magnetism. I was
Hmm.
constantly carrying around magnets with me and playing with them in class, teaching people what they would do. And he started a science club at lunchtime, and we started actually talking about Tesla. He would bring me books and all kind of stuff on Tesla. And by the time I was 25, I thought I had an answer to the antigrav situation, which
Hmm.
is why I started pursuing the aviation uh, degree. I actually planned and designed to build the world's first privately owned starship. I've still got the designs. It has a name. I've got the generators all designed. It is completely self sustaining and has a crew complement of 5,000 people if I could build it. But
Wow.
yeah, I kind of got stopped.
Uh-huh. Yeah, sometimes people meet roadblocks, especially with a project of that magnitude. I mean, that to transport 5,000 people in any capacity would be probably the biggest feat in transportation in history.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. The craft was almost a mile long and about 3/4 of a mile wide. Completely self sustained, had a complete botany bay, garden center, you name it. If they wanted it, it was on board.
So, do you think that you came up with the concept for this spaceship within your own mind, or was this information channeled or given to you in some other fashion?
I think it was actually given to me because it was one night I went outside. I was at work and I was training as a Class C wastewater operator at the time for Coca-Cola recycling plant.
Hmm.
And I went outside to take a smoke break. It was a clear sky, stars everywhere. And I remember seeing one of my vivid UFO sightings. And I lost 15 minutes of time at that point.
Oh,
When
wow.
I realized it, I was back inside, back up on my wastewater area, and I was literally already sketching these designs out.
Wow.
So I had 5 people working with me that watched me literally design this craft from the ground up on graph paper in this place. And they had already jumped on the bandwagon and said if I ever got it built, they were ready to go.
Wow. So, did you ever consult with aeronautical engineers or other construction engineers or design engineers to like check the veracity of the design or the technology involved?
I actually did while I was in the aviation academy. I talked about it constantly and was drawing out blueprints the whole way through, even come up with a three-dimensional circuit that freaked everybody out. Uh, we were doing total impedance and resistance of the circuit. Um, and as I was doing this, they decided, okay, well, we're going to give the class a project, design your own circuit and do the math. I designed a circuit that looked like a cube. I don't know where it came from, just popped into my head. Plugged the
Hmm.
numbers in, did the math, and the first number I come up with was pi to the 14th digit. The second number I come up with was the exact number for light speed. When I took
Wow.
it to my instructors, they both freaked out. One of them being a 30-year veteran in the FAA, and the other one being an Air Force pilot that had retired out. And both of them are going, okay, where did you get this? Where did it come from? And to this day, they're actually still using my design to teach the total impedance and resistance of a circuit in their classroom.
Wow.
Um, got into the electrical side of it, the engineering side of it, found out that it would not have anything magnetic in it. You could not possibly have any metal that would be magnetized. It had to be completely aircraft grade aluminum, covered in a thin layer of carbon fiber inside and out. Had to be done to high heat stuff. Um, it's a simple design. Like Tesla said, a child could do it.
Hmm. Do you think that this is a key or perhaps a step in the direction towards 0 point energy?
I know it is. I've actually built a small prototype while I was at the academy, proving that 0 point is possible. But it's not generators that we're needing to look at. It's alternators. Tesla didn't build generators, he built alternators. And if you don't do it and that start out with that basic design, it's not going to work. The coil has to be stationary, the magnets have to spin.
Wow, that's incredible. Does any of your research have any correlation? I don't want to get off track of what you've been doing or your work, but is there any correlation between what you discovered in your work and the designs that Bob Lazar has been talking about, especially in the recent Jeremy Corbell film, the sport model in particular? Do these technologies have anything in common, or have you found something that's different from that type of energy source?
My energy source is not you would not produce any radiation whatsoever. So I do not believe there would be anything that would actually coincide between the two.
Okay.
Um, I would not be using any reactors. I would be using a basic alternator platform with magnetics. It's like a dynamo, but it's being pushed by its own magnetic field.
Okay, so kind of a self-perpetuating machine once the initial energy got started.
And that's actually what I named it, was a space system, SPAC, a self perpetuating alternating system.
Wow, that's cool. That's so cool. So I'm fascinated by this, and I don't want to minimize the importance of your research in that field, but I want to shift gears a little bit because you have so many irons in the fire, and I have not had anyone on this show yet. I've had a lot of UFO people, but I have not had any people yet that deal with the occult or demonology. And I'd like to shift over to that topic a little bit because that will be a new topic for the viewers. And does your interest and your involvement in or study of the occult have anything to do with this connection with alien technology and possible alien intervention, as you've claimed, like with your parents and potentially with the circumstances of your birth? Do you think that this awareness of the occult and occult practices is tied to that, or are these things kind of separated from each other?
I believe so. I actually started out at an early age. Actually, my mother got me into church when I was 5. That's where I started singing and started playing music at first, and got really big into the angel side of it. And I was actually writing in angel script or angelic script at that time. Was actually at about the age of 6, started actually paying attention to what was called angelic script. Uh, I'm not what you would call a normal preacher. I am big into every subject as far as esoterics, from the Bible to the ancient texts altogether. I believe there's more to the story.
Mm-hmm.
And I do fully believe that the beings that we see today and that we're dealing with today were the ones spoken about in the ancient texts and in the Old Testament. There's no way they cannot be. We're seeing the same things they were seeing.
Can you get a little more into detail on that? Are you talking about alien presence, or are you talking about other types of beings?
Both. There are two different types. There are many different species, but there's two different actual types. We've got some that are interdimensional, and we've got some that are nuts and bolts coming in craft. And the interdimensional ones are the ones I think we have to worry about.
Yeah. Can we, excuse me, can we delve a little bit more into the demonology part of that? And before we went on the air, you and I were discussing briefly the Necronomicon, and we had touched on the subject of demonology because I had read the book actually twice in the past. It's called The Demonologist, and it was by, I don't know if it was by Ed and Lorraine Warren or it was about them, but I read that book. It was kind of a thick book. I read that a couple times. And you talk about a book that is scary to read by yourself. I don't care if it's broad daylight. If you're sitting in a house alone and you're reading that book and you don't get the heebie jeebies, there is something wrong with you. Your spider senses are dead, I'll tell you. But anyway, can we talk a little bit about demonology, and how does your research and your knowledge of the occult tie in with demonology? Because I'm fascinated by the topic.
Well, I got really tied into it. That I got into when I was probably 16 or 17. The first time I started actually messing around with Ouija boards with my friends, and I know Zach Bagans on a couple of shows. He actually talks about a being named Zozo. I met that son of a gun a long time before he ever mentioned him. I met him just about the first time I ever picked up a Ouija board. Uh, he is a very dangerous entity to deal with, and he will follow people around. But like I was saying, with the demon side of it, it's if you look at the Lesser Keys of Solomon and you pay attention to what King Solomon was doing when he was actually building the temple, he was actually controlling demons. He was forcing them to do the building for him. And I think at a point they finally rebelled. And honestly, I think that's what we're dealing with now is the ones that rebelled. And a lot of them have been playing tricks on people for years and making them think that there's something they're not. But at the same aspect, we also have the other side that's coming in and they're helping people and trying to assist humanity at the same time.
Wow.
Uh,
Yeah. Like discarnate entities. Now, these are not discarnate human entities. These are angelic or other powered beings. Do you see these beings in the classic terms of the Bible as good and evil, and on the side of God and on the side of Lucifer, subscribing to the classical Judaic Christian uh, mythology, or are you working with a different interpretation of that kind of Christianity that kind of involves all of these other practices and kind of allows for these other practices and beliefs to share space with some of those more traditional beliefs?
I think it's the second. I think that it's actually a mix. We've got several different books that are telling the same stories from different sides, and it's just the point of view of the writer where they were seeing it from. Um, yes, I do believe that the angels and the demons are what we are talking about, and I do believe they are connected to what the Bible says. So It's kind of nutty. But the more I read into it and the more I got into the subject, the more I realized that that had to be the case, that they had to be connected. And there's not really two forms. The angels and demons are actually the same thing. It's just one set is fallen and the other is not.
Wow. So I I have to ask, what are your personal experiences with these types of entities? You kind of briefly touched on it when we brushed over the Necronomicon and demonology. I would love to hear about what these direct experiences are like and what happened.
Well, at one point, I'll tell you one story, and it's one that I could actually back up. I think if I could find the guy. I was actually in high school. I had a couple of guys that really didn't like me very much, but they showed up one day while we were actually messing around with the Ouija board and hanging out. And one of them decided that he was going to get on the board with me. He wanted to see what it was about. And guess who showed up? It was Zozo. Well, he decided to start belittling this entity, literally raked this entity over the coals. Uh, Talked about all kind of stuff, threw off on me and several other things. And I tried to warn him. I said, "You're messing with fire. You're playing with fire. You need to back off." 2 days later, a gang of three or four got a hold of him with baseball bats and literally put him in the hospital.
Wow.
And this entity had stated that it would get him back for what he was saying. And then 2 days later, he was in the hospital. I don't know if it's connected, but I don't believe in coincidence anymore. I'll
Right.
say that.
So have you ever done any types of kind of integrating the reverend part of what you're doing here or the pastor part of your work? Have you ever done any cleansing of houses or facilities or even exorcisms of people who have been afflicted with these types of entities or infestations in their houses?
Not full blown exorcisms, but I have done house cleansings. I have actually done tarot readings. I'm actually about to get back into doing tarot readings again. My son decided to gift me a set of tarot cards tonight, so I'm
Oh,
actually going to get back into that. But I've done smudgings and I've done house blessings. I work with sigils, protection sigils, and I actually have posted several of them for use on Twitter for people to actually use. My butterfly emblems that I have on my walls are actually protection symbols. They're actually the sigils are embedded into the picture. I keep my house cleansed. I do not play around. If I go out the door and I feel like something has attached itself or is following me, when I come back in, I cleanse my house and I make sure of it. And I don't waste any time to do so.
right. Could you give us the some of the basic steps for doing a cleansing for those viewers who maybe they go out and they do paranormal investigations or somehow feel like they've gone somewhere and something has attached itself to them or followed them home or maybe is attached to an item that recently came into their possession rather. What would your advice be to someone in that situation? What can they do?
Well, first off, I would make sure I didn't have any of these books that I've been speaking of, like the Necronomicon, in the house. And if I did, it would be wrapped in black cloth with salt and be wrapped in white ribbon and put into a drawer, a dark drawer. And then I would go through the house with a candle and I would go through with dragon's blood sage. And I would actually do, you got to do every inch, closets, near your windows, corners. You want that smoke to be through the house. And as you do so, you just pray for the entity to have to leave. You tell it forcefully that it has to go. If you are lighthearted about it, it's not going to work. You have to believe it will work. It's all about belief. Um, but
Have you ever
with
had
the
any like verbal confrontation with these entities, like a conversation or any direct conflict, or is it just more like you experience phenomena around you or maybe even against you, but not a direct interaction with these entities?
The only actual direct interactions I've had with them would have been with Zozo on the Ouija board, and then with one I call Red Eyes. I call him Red Eyes because every time I see him, he's a giant wolf and he's got blood red glowing eyes. The best description I can come up with is a hound of hell for this thing. Usually, I would see it in the woods, or it would be in an area um, where I would be alone and it would be dark, like a graveyard or something, because I used to go through graveyards a lot. I loved it.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Me too.
it's
Actually,
one of the most peaceful places
it
you can
is.
actually be.
It is, and I'll
Uh,
name it Earlham Cemetery in Richmond, Indiana. One of my favorite places to hang out. Anyway,
I
go
was
ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Oh, you're fine. I was actually in a graveyard in Gettysburg at one point
Oh, that'd be
while I was working
fascinating.
with a moving company, and the feelings you get in Gettysburg. Oh, wow. It is beyond belief. With me being empathic, I pick up on all kinds of energies. And just walking through that graveyard was like meeting these people as I walk through. There's still a bunch of them that are still there. Uh, Now, Red Eyes, you don't really want to mess with him. The best thing
Hmm.
you can do is try to ignore him. Smudging usually doesn't work, but he doesn't very often come into a home. He likes to stay out in nature and try to catch you off guard. Zozo, he'll stay in your house and plague you if you
Mm.
don't do something about it. The best thing you can do is to wrap your Ouija board up and put it away, and then do a house blessing and you got to keep the portal closed for a while to let him get bored.
Yeah.
And you got to be forceful with him because he will stay. He's a prankster.
Do you think it's dangerous for the average people to toy around with Ouija boards? Do you think that should be left to people with some kind of training or has someone that has a strategy to psychically protect themselves from these types of entities? Like, let's face it, they're sold on the shelf, and any kid anywhere can go buy a Ouija board.
Yes, and those will open a portal, but they are nowhere near as strong as a handmade one. If you
Oh,
make one, it opens a permanent portal with that board, and you would not. You can be very, very in trouble. You can be in a lot of trouble if you're not careful of who you invite onto it. Um, Now the store bought ones will work, but they're not quite as potent, and the door is easier closed.
mm,
Um, I don't recommend somebody just getting into it willy nilly. Make sure you do your research. You got to know how to, if you're going to call on an entity, you want to know how to say goodbye.
right. Yeah, no doubt. And I've been playing with an electronic spirit box as of late, and I've had some interesting results. And I'm going to be sharing those results in a later episode before the end of the year. Um, have you ever used any electronic devices yourself, like a spirit box or any other kind of communication device, or has this all been kind of tactile through a Ouija board or tarot cards or that kind of physical tactile connection to
I
these
have
types
not
of
really, I've
tools?
not really got into the electronics yet. Um, I feel that it kind of takes away from it a little bit. I like doing things the old fashioned way. Sometimes the old ways are better.
Okay. So have you ever, it just reminds me, have you done any dowsing or anything like that? Has that skill, is that part of your repertoire or do you know anything about it yourself?
I've I've used pendulums, but I haven't actually done any dowsing.
Okay.
Um, I've wanted to, but I haven't actually got into it yet.
That's cool. So, for people who are going to be looking for your channel on YouTube, can you tell them a little bit about your show and what they can expect from watching your show?
Well, I'm going to try to give as much truth as possible because that's all I'm for. I want everybody to know and be educated on the things that they need to know because we are in dark times, whether anybody wants to realize it or not. We've got things moving on this earth that haven't moved in a very long time, and they need to be able to protect themselves. So that's mostly what I'm going to be talking about. That's why I actually said about with Krampus on the first episode for everybody to be careful what they invite because it may come to pass.
I see.
And
So, do you think that veil between the physical world and the spirit world is somehow that barrier is weakened right now, or somehow more pliable?
it's so thin, it's ridiculous. A lot of us that are empaths can sense it when we walk by the openings. Um, you can feel it. You can feel the energies, and it's getting thinner and thinner. And people need to watch out and be careful and make sure their houses are cleansed at all times.
So, what we're talking about here is this kind of your life's work? Is this your mission? Do you kind of have a mission statement or a specific type of goal that you're working for through the work you're doing? I know you're talking about disseminating the truth through your show, but do you have some more focused purpose or an agenda?
Mm.
And I don't mean agenda in a negative way. I mean in a positive way. Like what you're talking about, teaching people how to protect themselves. Do you think that we're going to be going through some kind of earth changes? Or I'm not trying to ask you leading questions. I'm just asking you if there's something that you sense in the future or about our future that people need to be aware of. Do you think we're in a serious transitional phase on the earth here?
Yes, I believe we are. I believe we are about to go through some very major transitions.
Whoa. Wow, my phone, I have my phone turned down and my phone just started talking to me. Siri heard this conversation and started talking to me about earth transitions just now. That's crazy. And
That
I
is a
normally
little.
have to say the words, "Hey Siri," to get my phone to listen to me. And now it is back. Wow. If people go back and watch
Oh,
this
I'm going
tape,
dead.
you will hear my phone start to talk to me about that as I said it. And I did not invoke the genies known as Siri that's in my phone. That's crazy. Anyway, I interrupted you, but my phone started talking to me in the middle of that. Nuts. Anyway, go ahead. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'm sorry. Hello? What? Oh no. His connection is lost? Did that really just happen? This is not a put on, folks. This is not a put on at all. You saw my phone. You Shirley, go back after this show is over, and you'll have heard my phone talking to me while we were having that conversation. I go through this. I see Reverend Richard Moonchild in my phone. I look down and now I see his logo, but I don't see him or hear him. And that is weird. That is really weird. This is not a put on. I promise you. I give you my word. What you just saw happen, whether there's a rational explanation or not, was not planned, was not a put on. This really just happened on this show, live on the air. And we were talking about energies and earth transitions and warnings about the future. And I just want to be straight up with everybody. You know, I don't want to ask my guests leading questions. And I kind of sensed that the conversation was going in that direction. And I was just trying to facilitate the topic a little bit. But, you know, I want people who come on this show to give genuine answers from their point of view and as they see it. So I'm not trying to feed answers to my guests. Please don't think I'd ever do that. But we're 39 minutes into the show. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to play the happy music. Why wouldn't I do that? I'm going to take a look. Fascination Street, Doc Skinner, you're amazing. I love Doc Skinner. We had a great show. Mika, Jimmy, Ray Daw. I see Doc explaining esoterica. Thank you, everybody. So look for that episode of me on Fascination Street. Look for me on that episode of 1028 Live from a couple of nights ago. I'm going to be going to Jimmy Church's party in LA at the Rainbow, December 26th. Mark Gemini Thwaite in January. I'm going to be going to COSM, the Chapel of Sacred Mirrors, the location that Alex Gray has put together. And then, of course, the trip with Doc Skinner to Area 51 in March. We have a lot coming up for this show. And look for those Wickenburg, Arizona episodes. We're going to have our ghost hunting episodes put up soon, and we'll analyze our spirit box results. Thank you so much. Like, subscribe, show me some love, share this show, and help me get to 300 subscribers by the end of the year. That would be amazing, and I would love you forever. Thank you for watching. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas, and everyone take care. Good night, everybody. Boom.